My sister invited me to her baby shower. I thought it would be a day filled with joy, laughter, and blessings for a new beginning, but I couldn't have been more wrong. When the room quieted and every eye was on her, she stood up with a smug smile and declared, "Your late husband is the father of my child." Gasps rippled through the crowd. And as if that wasn't enough, she demanded I hand over $102 million of my inheritance, and in that moment my entire world shattered. The shock, the whispers, the looks of pity, they still echo in my mind. My sister thought she had already won. She even held up photos convinced her lies were unshakable proof. But she didn't know what I had. In my hands was a file, a truth powerful enough to strip away every ounce of her confidence. When I laid it down, her face drained of color. And then, exactly 5 minutes later, the door opened. My lawyer walked in, and the entire room froze in stunned silence. Why did my own family betray me so deeply, and what secret would flip the tables in the most unexpected way? Stay with me. You won't believe how this story unfolds. Life didn't stop after my husband's accident. I threw myself into work at a tech startup in Charlotte, coding late into the night to keep my mind off the emptiness. My corner office overlooked the city skyline, and I'd stare out trying to feel something beyond the ache. The team relied on me for a new app launch, and I buried myself in algorithms and deadlines. My boss, a guy with a knack for pep talks, clapped me on the shoulder one day. "Felicia, you're killing it. This app's gonna be huge." I forced a smile, but the praise felt hollow. Work was my anchor, keeping me from drifting into the grief that waited at home. To cope, I started yoga classes at a studio near my house. The instructor, a calm woman with a nose ring, guided us through poses that forced me to breathe deeply to focus on the present. "Let go of what you can't control," she'd say, her voice steady. I tried, but the pain clung like damp air. Still, those sessions became my sanctuary twice a week. I'd roll out my mat stretch and feel my body loosen, even if my heart didn't. One evening, a woman in class, maybe sensing my struggle, handed me a green tea after savasana. "You look like you're carrying the world," she said softly. I nodded, unable to explain the weight. Back home, Mom called, often, her voice warm but always circling back to my sister. I'd grown up in her shadow. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Even now, with me footing the bill for Mom's new house in a gated Charlotte community, she'd gush about my sister's latest scheme. "She's got big plans," Mom said one night over the phone, her tone bright. "Always so creative." I gripped the receiver, my stomach tightening. Creative. My sister's last venture, a line of overpriced candles, crashed in a month. But Mom never saw her flaws. I'd agreed to help Mom financially without a second thought. After my husband's death, he'd left me more than enough, a fortune that made my head spin. The house payment was $25,000 a month, and I wired it to Mom's account like clockwork. She'd call to thank me, but the conversations always veered to my sister. "She's got such a spark," Mom would say, and I'd bite my tongue, remembering how my coding awards in high school barely got a nod. I'd worked hard to prove myself, but it was never enough next to her. One Sunday, I drove to Mom's new place for dinner. The house was all sleek lines and glass, a far cry from the cramped apartment we'd grown up in. Mom had set the table with her best china, and we sat over plates of roasted chicken, the air filled with her chatter. "Your sister called today," she said, eyes lighting up. "She's working on something big, Felicia. You should be proud of her." I pushed a piece of chicken around my plate, my chest tight. Proud? I hadn't seen my sister since the funeral, where she'd barely said 2 words to me. "What's she up to now?" I asked, trying to sound interested. Mom waved a hand. "Oh, you know her, always full of surprises." The dinners became a routine every Sunday at 6. Mom would cook, pour wine, and talk about my sister's dreams as if they were reality. I'd nod, sip my Merlot, and feel like a guest in my own family. My work at the startup was grueling, meetings with investors, debugging code until my eyes burned, but it was the only place I felt in control. One night after a 16-hour day, I got home to find a voicemail from Mom. Felicia, honey, your sister's coming to dinner next week. Isn't that exciting? Her voice was all warmth, but my stomach sank. My sister's visits always left me feeling small, like I was still the awkward kid trailing behind her. At yoga, I mentioned it to the woman who'd given me tea. She'd become a friend, someone I could confide in. Family's tough, she said, rolling up her mat. But you're stronger than you think. I wanted to believe her, but the thought of seeing my sister stirred up old wounds. Growing up, her charm had always outshone my quiet determination. Mom would hang on her every word while my straight-A report cards got a pat on the head. Now with my husband gone, those dinners were supposed to be my lifeline to family. But each one chipped away at me, leaving me wondering why I was never enough. By the time the next dinner rolled around, I was bracing myself. I pulled into Mom's driveway, the house glowing under the evening sky. I smoothed my blouse, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The table was set, candles flickering, and Mom was already pouring wine. "You're early, Felicia," she said, smiling as she handed me a glass. I settled into a chair, hoping for a quiet evening, but Mom's chatter quickly turned to my sister. "She's coming tonight," Mom said, her eyes bright. "She's got something big in the works." I nodded, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. Big plans, always big plans, that was her thing. Never mind that her last idea, a makeup tutorial channel, had flopped after 2 videos. Mom kept talking, her voice full of pride. "Your sister's got such a spark, you know, always chasing dreams." I forced a smile, but my chest ached. Growing up, I'd watched Mom hang on her every word, her school plays, her prom queen crown, while my science fair trophies barely got a glance. I'd spent years proving myself, coding through sleepless nights to build a career, but it never seemed to matter as much. "What's her plan this time?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Mom shrugged, stirring the gravy. "Oh, you'll see. She's full of surprises." The doorbell rang, and my stomach twisted. My sister swept in, her perfume sharp, her dress clinging to a noticeable baby bump. She was 8 months along, glowing in a way that made the room feel smaller. "Felicia," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt rehearsed. I stiffened, caught off guard by her warmth. She hadn't hugged me like that since we were kids. Mom rushed over, fussing over her, adjusting a cushion on the couch. "Look at you, so radiant," Mom said, beaming. I sat back, watching them, feeling like an outsider in my own family. We moved to the table, and Mom served the food, piling extra mashed potatoes on my sister's plate. "You need to eat for 2, she said, her voice soft. I cut into my chicken, trying to focus on the meal, but Mom's praise kept coming. "Your sister's been posting these amazing pregnancy updates online," she said, glancing at me. "Thousands of followers already. She's going to be such a great mom." I chewed slowly, the words stinging. My sister smirked, twirling a lock of hair. "It's just the beginning," she said, her voice coy. "I've got something huge planned." I raised an eyebrow. Huge, like what I asked, trying to sound curious instead of skeptical. She leaned back, rubbing her belly, her eyes gleaming. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, dodging the question. Mom clapped her hands. "Isn't she incredible? Always keeping us guessing." I swallowed hard, the food tasting like ash. Incredible. I'd been paying for Mom's house, keeping her comfortable, while my sister's plans always seemed to end in chaos. But Mom didn't see that she saw her golden girl. The conversation shifted to baby names, nursery themes, and my sister's latest obsession with organic cribs. "It's all about giving my baby the best," she said, her voice dripping with confidence. Mom nodded eagerly, hanging on every word. I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. I'd spent my childhood chasing Mom's approval, but it was always just out of reach. "Felicia, you should take notes," Mom teased, gesturing to my sister's belly. "She's got it all figured out." I forced a laugh, but it felt like a slap. Figured out her last business left her in debt, and I'd bet this pregnancy wasn't as perfect as she made it sound. As we cleared the dishes, my sister pulled out her phone, showing Mom a video of her latest post. They laughed together, heads bent over the screen, while I stacked plates in the sink. "You should follow her," Felicia, Mom said, not looking up. "She's inspiring so many people." I rinsed a plate, my knuckles white. Inspiring, I'd built a career from scratch, led a team through a major app launch, but Mom never bragged about that. My sister caught my eye, her smile sharp. "Maybe you'll get there one day," she said, her tone light but cutting. I dried my hands, forcing myself to stay calm. "Who's the dad?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. Her smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "That's part of the surprise," she said, winking at Mom. Mom giggled like it was a game. I didn't press, but the way she dodged the question set off a warning bell in my head. My sister wasn't just here to show off, she was building up to something. After dinner, I kissed Mom's cheek and headed for the door. My sister called after me, her voice too sweet. "You're coming to my baby shower, right? It's gonna be big." I nodded, my jaw tight. Whatever she was hiding, I'd find out soon. 1 month later, I was at my desk staring at lines of code when my phone buzzed with a text from Tracy. "Baby shower next month at the Omni Hotel downtown. You have to be there." The all caps felt like a command, not an invitation. I leaned back, my eyes narrowing. The Omni was Charlotte's swankiest spot, crystal chandeliers, velvet chairs, the works. Why would Tracy, whose last event was a backyard barbecue, pick a place like that? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't reply. Something about her tone felt off, like she was playing a part. I pushed through my work, leading a meeting with the dev team on our app's new interface. My colleague, a guy with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded as I outlined the next sprint. "Felicia, you're on fire," he said. I managed a half smile, but my thoughts kept drifting to Tracy. Her pregnancy glow, her cryptic big plans, it all gnawed at me. After the meeting, I grabbed coffee at a shop near the office, the hum of conversation grounding me. That's when I called Nicole, my friend from college, who'd always had a knack for sniffing out trouble. Nicole answered on the first ring. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was warm, steady, the opposite of Tracy's performative cheer. I told her about the dinner, how Mom fawned over Tracy, and the baby shower invite that felt more like a summons. "She's up to something," I said, stirring my latte. Nicole paused, then spoke carefully. "Tracy's been posting weird stuff online, lots of cryptic captions about new beginnings and claiming what's mine." I don't like it. I froze, the spoon clattering against my cup. Nicole worked as a private investigator, now digging into backgrounds for corporate clients. If she was suspicious, there was a reason. "Check her socials," Nicole said. "She's been tagging high-end brands, acting like she's already rich." I pulled up Tracy's profile on my phone. Her latest post showed her posing in a designer dress, hand on her belly, with the caption, "Big things coming. Stay tuned." The comments were full of heart emojis and vague congratulations, but no mention of the baby's father. My jaw tightened. Tracy's influencer career had tanked months ago. Where was she getting the money for this? I thanked Nicole and hung up, my mind racing. That evening, I met Nicole at a bar downtown, a cozy spot with exposed brick walls. She slid into the booth, her laptop already open. "I did some digging," she said, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Tracy's been emailing event planners, booking the Omni's grand ballroom. That place costs a fortune." I sipped my gin and tonic, my pulse quickening. "She's got no job, no savings," I said. "How's she paying for it?" Nicole's eyes narrowed. "That's the thing. She's been dropping hints about a big payout to her followers. Sounds like she's banking on something or someone." I leaned forward, my voice low. "She wouldn't say who the dad is. Kept calling it a surprise." Nicole frowned, tapping her laptop. "That's not all. She's been messaging some shady PR guy, talking about a reveal at the shower. I couldn't get details, but it's not just a party, Felicia. She's planning a spectacle." My stomach churned. Tracy always loved attention, but this felt different, calculated, almost predatory. I thought back to her smug smile at dinner, the way Mom ate it up. The next day, I was back at work debugging code when Tracy called. "Felicia, you didn't RSVP," she said, her voice sugary. "The shower's going to be huge. Caterers, photographers, the works. You're coming, right?" I hesitated, picturing her at the Omni basking in the spotlight. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She giggled, but it sounded forced. "Good. It's going to change everything." The call ended and I stared at my phone, a chill running through me. Change everything. What was she scheming? Nicole texted me later, urging me to meet again. We grabbed lunch at a deli near her office, the smell of fresh bread calming my nerves. She pulled out a notebook, her handwriting sharp and precise. "I tracked down some of Tracy's old posts," she said. "She's been vague about the pregnancy timeline, but she's milking it for clout. And that PR guy, he's known for staging viral moments." I bit into my sandwich, barely tasting it. "She's always been a show-off," I said, "but this feels bigger." Nicole nodded. "I'm not saying she's lying, but she's hiding something. Be careful at that shower." I spent the next week distracted, my focus slipping at work. My boss noticed, pulling me aside after a presentation. "You okay, Felicia?" he asked. I nodded, brushing it off, but Tracy's words echoed in my head. By the time I got home each night, I was scouring her social media looking for clues. Every post was a performance, her laughing, posing, hinting at a life-changing announcement. Nicole's warnings stuck with me, each one tightening the knot in my chest. Tracy wasn't just throwing a party, she was setting a stage. I tossed and turned that night, unable to shake the feeling that Tracy's surprise was aimed at me. A week after her call about the baby shower, I tried to focus on work, tweaking code for a new feature, but my mind kept circling back to her words. The way she'd dodged questions about the baby's father, her cryptic hints about changing everything, it didn't add up. I'd known Tracy my whole life. She thrived on drama, always angling for the spotlight. But this felt different, more deliberate. I pushed back from my desk, rubbing my temples. What was she after? My inheritance was the only thing that made sense, but how could she claim it? The thought gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. I called Nicole, needing her clear-headed perspective. She picked up, her voice brisk. "What's Tracy done now?" I told her about the text, the overly sweet tone that didn't match the sister I knew. "She's never this nice," I said, pacing my living room. "It's like she's trying to sell me something." Nicole made a thoughtful sound. "You're right to be suspicious. I've been poking around and there's stuff about Tracy that doesn't sit right. Give me a few days, I'll dig deeper." I trusted Nicole's instincts. Her work as a private investigator meant she could spot lies a mile away. The next morning, I met Nicole at a cafe near her office, a small place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh espresso. She slid a folder across the table, her expression serious. "I started looking into Tracy's past," she said, sipping her coffee. "She's been cagey about her pregnancy, but I found some old messages on a forum she used to post on. She was asking about legal ways to claim inheritance without a will." My heart skipped a beat. "Inheritance?" I asked, leaning in. Nicole nodded. "Yeah. She mentioned a big score tied to someone close to her. No names, but it's not hard to guess who." I gripped my mug, the heat burning my palms. Tracy had always been ambitious, but this was bold even for her. "What about my husband?" I asked, my voice low. Nicole hesitated, then flipped open the folder. I pulled some records from his old workplace. He was a big deal in finance, right? Made a fortune before the accident. I nodded, the memory of his success still bittersweet. "Well," Nicole continued, "Tracy was asking around about him months ago before he passed. She wanted to know about his assets, his connections. It's weird, Felicia." My stomach twisted. Tracy had barely mentioned my husband when he was alive, always brushing him off as too serious. Why was she digging into his finances? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What else did you find?" I asked. Nicole tapped the folder. "Not much yet, but I'm checking her old emails and contacts. She's been talking to some guy who runs a shady investment firm. I think she's planning to use the baby shower to pull something off. I stared at the table, my mind racing. The baby shower wasn't just a celebration, it was a trap. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, scrolling through Tracy's social media again. Her posts were a parade of confidence photos of her in expensive outfits, captions about taking what's owed. One post showed her at a boutique, holding up a tiny onesie with a sly smile. The comments gushed, but I noticed she never answered questions about the baby's father. My suspicion grew heavy like a stone in my chest. Tracy wasn't just chasing clout, she was building a narrative, and I was the target. The next day, Nicole called with an update. I got into an old account Tracy used for freelance gigs, she said. She was emailing someone about securing her future through a family connection. The email stopped right around when your husband passed. My breath caught. You think she's targeting me? I asked. Nicole's voice was grim. I think she's been planning this for a while. I'm still digging, but you need to watch your back at that shower. I spent the following week on edge, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Tracy sent another text, her words dripping with fake warmth. Can't wait to see you at the Omniware, something nice, it's a big deal. I didn't respond, my fingers trembling. At work, I struggled to focus, my code riddled with errors. My colleague noticed, raising an eyebrow during a review. You seem off, Felicia, he said. I brushed it off, but the weight of Tracy's intentions pressed down on me. Nicole's warnings echoed in my mind. She was onto something, and I needed answers before the shower. Nicole met me again, this time at a park near my house. She handed me a USB drive. This has everything I've found so far, she said. Tracy's been researching inheritance laws, and she's got a history of bending the truth. I'm still looking into your husband's past to see if there's a connection. I clutched the drive, my resolve hardening. Whatever Tracy was planning, I'd be ready. The next day, my phone pinged with a new email. It was from her, no subject line, just a single attachment. I opened it, and my breath caught a photo of my husband and Tracy, their arms around each other, smiling at some beach. The timestamp was from 2 years ago, when he was still alive. My hands shook as I zoomed in. His face looked real, but something was off. The lighting didn't match her smile, too perfect. I called Mom right away, my voice tight. Did you know about Tracy and my husband? I asked, forwarding her the photo. She paused, then sighed. Oh, Felicia, they were close for a while. She told me they had a special connection. I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. A special connection my husband had barely mentioned, Tracy always dismissing her as immature. You knew, I pressed, my voice rising. Mom's tone softened like she was soothing a child. Honey, it was nothing serious. She just leaned on him sometimes. I paced my kitchen, fury building. Leaned on him. She's claiming they were together, Mom. This photo's fake. Mom chuckled as if I was overreacting. Tracy wouldn't lie about something like that. She's been through so much, Felicia. You should support her. Support her. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white. Tracy had spun a story, and Mom was buying every word. I ended the call, my mind racing. If Mom knew about this so-called relationship, why hadn't she told me? The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. I sat on my couch, staring at the photo again. The background was a generic beach, the kind you find on stock image sites. Tracy's dress looked cut and pasted, the edges too sharp. She'd gone to the trouble of faking evidence, but for what I thought of the baby shower, her hints about a big reveal. This wasn't just about attention, she was building a case, something to use against me. My inheritance was the only thing valuable enough to justify this kind of stunt. The realization hit like a punch. Tracy was trying to rewrite history to claim what was mine. I called Mom again the next day, hoping she'd reconsider. You really think Tracy's telling the truth? I asked, my voice steady but cold. She sighed again, impatient this time. Felicia, why can't you be happy for her? She's starting a family, and your husband was part of her life. Let it go. I clenched my jaw, her words stinging. Part of her life. He was my husband, not hers. Mom's blind loyalty to Tracy was nothing new, but this was different. She was defending a lie. "You're wrong about her," I said, my tone final. "And I'm done pretending otherwise." That evening, I logged into my bank account, my cursor hovering over the monthly transfer to Mom's account. $25,000 every month to keep her in that fancy house. I'd done it out of love, but now it felt like enabling. Mom had chosen Tracy's side, believing her over me, even with a fake photo staring her in the face. My finger clicked the cancel button, stopping the next payment. I sent Mom a text. "No more money. You've made your choice." My heart ached as I hit send, but I couldn't keep funding her denial. The next morning, Mom called, her voice shrill. "Felicia, what's this about stopping the payments? How am I supposed to live?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "You knew Tracy was lying and you backed her anyway," I said. "I'm done, Barbara." Calling her by her name felt strange, like severing a tie. She gasped, then started to argue, but I hung up. For years, I'd carried the weight of her favoritism, but this was the final straw. Tracy's photo and Mom's support had pushed me too far. I spent the day distracted, my work suffering. My boss pulled me aside after a meeting, his brow furrowed. "You're slipping, Felicia. Everything okay?" I nodded, muttering an excuse, but my thoughts were on Tracy's next move. She'd sent that photo to shake me, to make me doubt my husband's loyalty. But I knew him. He'd been devoted, always putting me first. Tracy's lie was desperate, and Mom's complicity made it worse. I opened my laptop, saving the email and photo as evidence. Whatever Tracy was planning at that shower, I wouldn't let her win. By evening, I was calmer, my resolve hardening. Tracy thought she could manipulate me, but she'd underestimated my strength. I was ready to fight back. My resolve to confront Tracy's lies grew stronger each day. I was at my desk, the hum of the office fading as I checked my phone for updates from Nicole. She'd promised to dig deeper, and I trusted her to find something concrete. That afternoon, she texted me to meet at her office, a small space downtown with stacks of files and a coffee maker that never stopped running. I arrived, my nerves buzzing, and found Nicole hunched over her laptop, her eyes narrowed in focus. "I've got something," she said, spinning the screen toward me. "It's about your husband." She pulled up a scanned document, yellowed at the edges, from a clinic in Raleigh. "This is an old medical record from 10 years ago," she explained, pointing to a line buried in the text. "Your husband had a consult with a specialist. It's not public, but I called in a favor to get it." I leaned in, scanning the jargon-heavy page. My pulse quickened. "What does it mean?" I asked, my voice low. Nicole's expression was grim. "It's not definitive, but it suggests issues. I'm still tracking down the full report." I sat back, my mind racing. My husband had never mentioned fertility problems, but we'd never tried for kids, so it hadn't come up. Could this be what Tracy was banking on? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on Nicole's plan. "The clinic closed years ago," she said, "but their records were archived at a hospital in Charlotte. I've got a contact there who's pulling the rest of his file. It'll take a few days." I nodded, grateful for her persistence. "Keep digging," I said. "If Tracy's lying, this could prove it." Back home, I paced my living room, the weight of the discovery settling in. If my husband had medical issues, it might explain Tracy's confidence, but I needed more than a hint. I opened my laptop, searching for any trace of his past that could help. That's when I remembered his father, Edward, a man I'd met only twice, once at our wedding, and once years earlier. He and my husband had a falling out over business decisions, and they'd barely spoken since. But Edward might know something about his son's health. Finding Edward wasn't easy. He'd moved to Asheville after their rift, living quietly in a cabin far from Charlotte's bustle. I dug through old emails, finding a contact from years ago when my husband had tried to reconcile. I dialed the number, my heart pounding. A gruff voice answered. "Who's this?" he asked, his tone wary. "It's Felicia, your son's wife," I said, keeping my voice steady. There was a long pause, then a sigh. Been a while. What do you need? I explained everything: the baby shower, Tracy's claims, the fake photo, and now the medical record. I didn't mention the inheritance outright, but I hinted at her motives. Edward listened, his silence heavy. My son never told me about health problems, he said finally, but he was private like that. If there's a record, I'll help you get it. I gripped the phone, relief washing over me. Thank you, Edward, I said. This means a lot. He grunted. I owe him that much. The next day, Nicole called with an update. The hospital's sending me the full file, she said, her voice tense with excitement. They found it in storage, but it's a mess: handwritten notes, old forms. I'll need time to sort through it. I thanked her, my mind already on Edward. I called him again, catching him as he was heading out. Felicia, he said, his tone softer this time. I've been thinking. My son saw a doctor in Raleigh when he was younger, before you met. I don't know details, but I can reach out to an old friend who worked there. Over the next week, I juggled work and waiting for news. My team was prepping for a big demo, and I forced myself to focus, leading late-night coding sessions. But every free moment I was on the phone with Nicole or Edward. Nicole texted me scans of faded documents, each one a puzzle piece. Still no smoking gun, she said during one call, but I'm close. Edward, meanwhile, tracked down his friend, a retired nurse who remembered my husband. She's checking her contacts, he told me. Might take a few days. Each conversation brought me closer to the truth, but the waiting was agony. I kept picturing Tracy at the Omni, her smug smile as she planned her reveal. I couldn't let her rewrite my husband's memory. At night, I lay awake thinking about Edward's gruff voice, his willingness to help despite the years of distance. It gave me hope, but the clock was ticking. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for Nicole's next update. I was still reeling from Tracy's scheming when the phone rang. This time it was Edward. His voice came through rough but steady. Felicia, I've found something about my son. My grip tightened on the mug in my hand. He had tracked down an old friend, a nurse from Raleigh, who had kept a box of clinic files stored away in her attic. This is serious, Edward said, pausing for a moment. Your husband had a medical condition that could change everything. I'll send you the documents. I pressed him for more, but he remained vague. You'll see when you read it. The next morning, a courier dropped off a sealed envelope at my door. Inside were photocopies of medical forms stamped with a Raleigh Clinic's logo, dated 12 years ago. The pages detailed my husband's visit to a specialist, with terms like chronic condition and long-term implications circled in red. My stomach churned as I read, but the jargon was dense, and Edward's warning lingered, serious, but not specific. I trusted my husband, but this was a piece of his past he'd never shared. Was this what Tracy was counting on? I called Edward back, my voice shaking. What does this mean for Tracy's claims? I asked. He sighed, the sound heavy with years of regret. My son kept secrets, Felicia. But he loved you. Whatever your sister's planning, these papers might stop her. He promised to overnight another file. He'd found a follow-up report from the same clinic. I thanked him, my mind spinning. The documents felt like a weapon, but I needed to understand them before the baby shower. I spent the day poring over the papers, cross-referencing medical terms online. The records hinted at a condition that could disrupt Tracy's narrative, but without the full picture, I was grasping at shadows. I needed to be ready for the Omni, where Tracy would stage her big moment. I imagined her standing in that grand ballroom, her smile calculated, her followers eating up every word. She'd been dropping hints online about a truth that would rewrite the story. I wasn't going to let her rewrite mine. I drove to a print shop in downtown Charlotte, making copies of the medical records to keep safe. The clerk, a young woman with a quick smile, asked if I was preparing for a case. Something like that, I muttered, tucking the originals into my bag. Back home, I spread the papers across my dining table, marking key sections with a highlighter. The more I read, the more certain I became. Tracy's lies were built on a shaky foundation, and these documents could tear it down. That evening, I rehearsed what I'd say at the shower. I pictured myself walking into the Omni dressed in a sharp blazer, my voice steady as I confronted Tracy. "You're lying," I'd say, holding up the records, letting her smugness crumble. I played the scene over and over, refining my words, imagining her reaction. Would she deny it? Double down? I didn't know, but I was done being her pawn. My husband's memory deserved better, and so did I. Edward called again the next day, his tone urgent. "The second file's on its way," he said. "It's got more details from the specialist. My friend says it's critical." I thanked him, my resolve hardening. Edward's help, despite his distance from my husband, gave me strength. He'd been a stranger to me, but now he was an ally. I asked about his rift with his son, curious. "We fought over his career," Edward admitted. I pushed him too hard. "But he was a good man, Felicia. Don't let anyone tarnish that." I spent the next few days preparing my focus razor sharp. At work, I powered through meetings, my team praising my clarity on the app's final tweaks. But every night I was back at my table studying the records, planning my move. I bought a new dress for the shower, a deep navy number that felt like armor. I practiced my speech in the mirror, keeping my voice calm but firm. Tracy thought she could outsmart me, but I was ready to turn her game against her. The morning of the shower, I checked my bag, documents, phone keys. I called Edward one last time, confirming the second file had arrived. It was thicker, with handwritten notes from a doctor. I didn't have time to read it fully, but Edward's words echoed. It was critical. I slipped it into my bag, my heart steady. Tracy's moment was coming, and I was ready to face her. I drove toward the Omni, my hands steady on the wheel. The Omni's ballroom glittered as I stepped inside. Chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen, each centered with a bouquet of roses. Tracy stood at the front, radiant in a flowing pink dress, her baby bump prominent. Her followers milled around, snapping photos, their excitement palpable. I adjusted my navy blazer, the weight of the medical records in my bag grounding me. Tracy's eyes met mine across the room, her smile tight but triumphant. She thought she'd won before the game even started. I found a seat near the back, my fingers brushing the envelope in my bag. The chatter around me was all about Tracy, her glow, her big announcement. I scanned the crowd, noting the influencers with their phones out, live streaming every moment. Tracy stepped up to a microphone, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you all for coming," she said, pausing for applause. "Today is not just about my baby, it's about family, legacy, and truth." My pulse quickened. Here it came. She took a deep breath, her hand resting on her belly. "My child's father was a great man," she said, her voice softening. "Ryan, my sister's husband, left a legacy worth $102 million. That belongs to our baby." The room gasped, cameras flashing. I gripped my chair, my heart pounding. She'd said it, my husband, her baby. The lie was bold, shameless. Whispers spread through the crowd, eyes darting toward me. Tracy's gaze locked on mine, daring me to react. I stood, my legs steady despite the fury burning inside. "That's a lie," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I walked to the front, pulling the medical records from my bag. "My husband wasn't your baby's father," I said, holding up the papers. "These are his medical records from a clinic in Raleigh. They show a condition that makes your claim impossible." I didn't elaborate. Edward's warning about the serious issue was enough. The crowd fell silent, phones still raised, capturing every word. Tracy's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "You're just jealous, Felicia," she snapped, her voice sharp. "You can't handle that. He loved me too." I shook my head, stepping closer. "He never loved you," I said, my tone calm but firm. "You faked a photo, spun a story. These documents prove the truth." I handed the papers to a woman in a suit nearby, one of Tracy's event planners, who looked stunned. The crowd's whispers grew louder, some shaking their heads, others typing furiously on their phones. Before Tracy could respond, a man stepped forward from the side of the room. He was tall, in a crisp gray suit, his face stern but composed. "I'm Andrew. he said, his voice carrying authority. "I'm the family's attorney, and I've reviewed Ryan's estate." He turned to Tracy, his eyes narrowing. "If you're claiming this child is his, we'll need a DNA test to confirm." The room erupted in murmurs, cameras zooming in. Tracy's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she clutched the microphone. That's not necessary." She stammered, her confidence crumbling. Andrew didn't back down. "It's standard in estate disputes," he said, addressing the crowd. "The records Felicia presented raised serious doubts. A DNA test will settle this." I watched Tracy, her eyes darting around, searching for an escape. Her followers, once adoring, now whispered among themselves, their phones capturing her panic. I felt a surge of relief. Andrew's presence was unexpected, but his demand was exactly what I needed. Tracy's lie was unraveling in front of everyone. She tried to salvage the moment, forcing a laugh. "This is my day," she said, her voice wavering. "Let's focus on the baby, not drama." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Some started to leave, their excitement replaced by skepticism. I stood my ground, the records still in my hand. "You can't claim what's not yours," I said, my voice steady. Tracy glared at me, her face pale, but she had no response. The event planner handed the papers back, her expression uneasy, as if she sensed the tide turning. Andrew approached me, lowering his voice. "I was hired by your husband's estate last year," he said. "I didn't expect this, but I'll ensure the DNA test happens." I nodded, grateful for his clarity. Tracy retreated to a corner, surrounded by a few loyal followers, her smile gone. The ballroom felt different now, the glamour tainted by her exposed deception. I slipped the records back into my bag, my heart still racing but lighter. I'd faced her, and she'd faltered. As the crowd thinned, I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face. 2 weeks later, I sat in Andrew's office, a sleek space downtown with glass walls and a view of Charlotte's skyline. He slid a manila folder across his desk, his expression calm but serious. "The DNA results are in," he said, opening the folder. "Tracy's baby isn't your husband's?" My shoulders relaxed, the weight of her lie lifting. I'd known it deep down, but seeing the proof, black ink on a lab report, made it real. Tracy's claim was a sham, just as I'd suspected. Andrew leaned back, his pen tapping the desk. "I've filed a fraud lawsuit against Tracy," he said. "Her attempt to claim $102 million by falsifying paternity is serious. The court's already frozen her accounts pending the case." I nodded, my mind flashing to her pale face at the shower, her trembling hands as she clutched the microphone. She'd known this was coming, but she'd gambled anyway. "What happens next?" I asked, my voice steady. "Discovery," Andrew replied. "We'll dig into her communications, her finances. She's in deep trouble." I left his office, the folder tucked under my arm. The streets of Charlotte buzzed with lunchtime crowds, but I felt detached, my thoughts on Tracy. Her followers had turned on her, her social media flooded with accusations of deceit. I'd seen the posts, angry comments, unfollows, sponsors dropping her. She'd built her world on lies, and now it was collapsing. I felt no pity, only a cold satisfaction. She'd tried to steal my husband's legacy, and she'd failed. Back home, I called Barbara to tell her the news. The DNA test proved Tracy lied. I said, my tone flat. "She's being sued for fraud." Barbara's voice cracked, a mix of shock and defensiveness. "She made a mistake, Felicia. She's still family." I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. "You backed her lies, Barbara. I'm done helping you." I'd already stopped her monthly payments, but this was final, no more chances. She pleaded, her voice rising, but I hung up, my resolve unshaken. Barbara had chosen Tracy, and now she'd face the consequences. The next day, I met Andrew at a coffee shop to discuss the lawsuit. He sipped an espresso, outlining the next steps. "Tracy's PR guy is cooperating," he said. "He's turned over emails showing she planned this for months." I stirred my latte, my jaw tight. Months. She'd been scheming even before my husband's death, weaving a story to exploit his fortune. "Will she go to jail?" I asked. Andrew shrugged. Possibly. Fraud of this scale carries penalties, especially with forged documents like that photo. I spent the week tying up loose ends. My team at work noticed my focus, one colleague joking I was back to my old self. But I wasn't. I was sharper hardened by betrayal. I reviewed the lawsuit papers with Andrew signing affidavits about Tracy's actions. The legal process was slow, but every step felt like justice. Tracy sent me a text, her tone desperate. "We can settle this, Felicia. Don't ruin me." I deleted it without replying. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. Barbara called again, begging for money to cover her bills. "I can't lose the house," she said, her voice trembling. I closed my eyes, the weight of years of obligation pressing down. "You should have thought of that before defending her," I said. "You're on your own, Barbara." Hanging up was easier this time. She'd lost her safety net just as Tracy had lost her credibility. I felt a pang of guilt, but it faded quickly. My loyalty was to myself now. As the lawsuit moved forward, I watched Tracy's world unravel from a distance. Her online presence shrank, her posts deleted, her brand in tatters. Andrew kept me updated, his emails detailing court dates and evidence. I saved every message, building a record of her downfall. The truth had set me free, but it had trapped her. I turned my focus to rebuilding my life, starting fresh. I stood in my old bedroom packing the last of my things from the sprawling Charlotte villa I'd shared with my husband. The high ceilings and marble floors felt like relics of a past life, one I was ready to leave behind. I'd listed the house for sale, and within days a young couple had made an offer. The closing was set for next week, and I was already picturing my new place, a sleek downtown condo with skyline views and no ghosts of family drama. I called a moving company, scheduling the transfer of my essentials. The rest, furniture, decor, memories, would stay with the house. I kept only my husband's watch, a simple silver piece he'd worn daily. It felt like enough. Barbara called as I taped up a box, her voice hoarse. "You're really selling the house?" she asked, as if she still had a claim. "Yes, Barbara," I said, my tone firm. "I'm moving on." She didn't argue this time, her silence heavy with resignation. I hung up, feeling lighter. Tracy sent an email, a last-ditch plea for forgiveness. "I was desperate, Felicia," she wrote. "Let's talk." I read it once, then archived it. My sister had crossed a line no apology could erase. I blocked her number, her social media, her everything. Cutting her out was like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. Barbara was next. No more calls, no more guilt trips. I was done with both of them, their lies and manipulations buried in the past. I met Nicole at a bistro near my new condo, a cozy spot with exposed brick and warm lighting. She grinned as I slid into the booth, her laptop open to a new case. "You look free," she said, passing me a coffee. I smiled, a real one for the first time in months. "I am," I said, "and I want to work with you." Nicole raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What, like a side gig?" she asked. I nodded. "Your PI skills saved me. I want to learn, maybe help with tech for your cases." Nicole leaned forward, her eyes bright. "You're a coder. You could build tools for tracking data, analyzing patterns." We brainstormed over lunch, sketching ideas on napkins. I'd always loved solving puzzles, and Nicole's work was a new kind of challenge. By the time we parted, we'd agreed to collaborate. She'd handle the fieldwork, I'd tackle the tech. It felt like a fresh start, a way to channel my energy into something meaningful. The move to the condo was smooth. I unpacked in a sunlit living room, arranging my desk by a floor-to-ceiling window. The city stretched out below, alive and vibrant. I set up my computer, diving into a coding project for Nicole's firm, a database to streamline her case files. It was satisfying, the kind of work that kept my mind sharp and my heart steady. At night, I walked the downtown streets, exploring cafes and bookstores, reclaiming my space. Barbara and Tracy faded from my thoughts. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Barbara had moved to a smaller place, selling off jewelry to get by. Tracy was facing court dates, her influencer days over. I didn't dwell on it. Their choices weren't my burden anymore. My focus was forward on building a life that was mine alone. I opened my laptop each morning, ready to code, ready to live. I woke each morning to sunlight streaming through the windows, my desk a hub of creativity. Nicole and I had launched our first joint project, a software tool to automate data analysis for her investigations. But a bigger opportunity came when my boss called, offering me a lead role on a new tech venture at work. It was a mobile app to connect local startups, a chance to shape Charlotte's tech scene. I said yes without hesitation, my heart racing with possibility. The project consumed my days. I met with a team of developers in a sleek office overlooking the city, whiteboards covered in diagrams and code snippets. My role was to design the app's core framework, a complex system that needed to be intuitive yet powerful. I thrived on the challenge, pouring hours into refining algorithms and testing prototypes. My colleagues noticed my energy, one calling me the spark of the team. It felt good to be defined by my work, not my past. Nicole joined me for brainstorming sessions, her PI perspective sharpening the app's features. Startups need trust, she said one evening, sipping wine in my condo. Add a verification layer for user profiles. I scribbled the idea down my laptop, glowing with lines of code. Our collaboration was seamless. Her instincts for truth meshed with my knack for systems. We laughed over late-night pizza, swapping ideas that felt like building something bigger than ourselves. Outside work, I carved out a new rhythm. I joined a running group, jogging through Charlotte's greenways at dawn, the city waking around me. The routine grounded me, each step a reminder of my strength. I stopped checking Tracy's social media, her lies no longer my concern. Barbara's calls had stopped too, her silence a relief. I'd learned that family wasn't about blood, it was about trust. Nicole was my family now, her loyalty proven when it mattered most. One afternoon, I presented the app's beta version to a room of investors. My voice was steady, my slides sharp, detailing how the app would streamline startup networking. The room buzzed with interest, hands raised with questions. I answered each one, confidence flowing. Afterward, my boss pulled me aside, his smile wide. "You're killing it, Felicia," he said. I nodded, a quiet pride settling in. I was no longer the woman weighed down by betrayal. I was building, creating, living. At home, I kept a journal, jotting down lessons from the past year. The truth I wrote was my anchor. It had exposed Tracy's deception, freed me from Barbara's demands, and shown me who I could trust. Self-reliance was my shield. Depending on myself meant no one could pull me down again. I thought of my husband, his watch still on my nightstand. He'd have been proud not of the money, but of the life I was forging. Nicole and I celebrated the app's first successful test at a rooftop bar, the city lights sparkling below. "To truth," she toasted, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, smiling. "And to standing on our own," I added. We sipped, the future wide open before us. The scars of betrayal were there, but they no longer defined me. I was Felicia, coder, creator, survivor, and that was enough.